Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Nice, nice, nice. So as per usual, I'm just gonna start working on stuff here. This is an unscheduled stream. Sorry, give me 1 second. My hair's driving me crazy today. This is an unscheduled stream. I just want to. I just really want to start figuring out exactly what I need to do for this piano key kick drum pedal. And I've been thinking about it a lot over the last few days. And I think there's a couple different ways we can go about it. There's going to be a simple way, a simplified version, and then a more true to the piano version. And I think it's important that we try the simplified version. And I think what I'm going to do is, instead of trying to adapt the pedal right away, I'm going to try and create a really simple 2D, almost piano key version of the mechanism I'm going for, because part of the plan, I want to obviously adapt this kick drum pedal to work like a piano key, but I also, in doing so, I want to see if we can redesign the piano key to be a little bit simpler than it is, because obviously it's extremely complex. And I feel like we're onto something with this whole thing. It's all, there's going to be differences, and I'm not trying to do something better than the current piano key, because obviously piano keys have evolved to give the player the best feel possible while they're playing. And I think, funny enough, feel isn't an objective thing, right? So there might be things that feel better or feel worse to different players in changing the design. However, I do think the objective factor would be to try and reduce part count and maybe use some compliant mechanisms. Basically, just take what the key is supposed to do, break that down into deliverables, and try and come up with a mechanism that does that in a simpler way. And if it doesn't end up feeling like as good as a regular piano key, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to figure out what this mechanism is all about. So I want to start by just talking about, I'm going to keep this image of, or this, oh no, what happened? Oh. I'm going to keep this diagram or this GIF running here. And I'm going to angle this down. I'm going to back my computer up if I can. Angle this down so we can take a look. Unfortunately, yeah, that's fine. So, and maybe I'll turn it around so it's better matches. Yeah. So there's a few key components here. I'm streaming. That's okay. It's just a whatever stream. I just wanted to. I'm kind of busy today, so I'm not necessarily going to stream as long as usual, but I just want to. I've just been thinking about this so much, so I want to figure out if this is going to work or not, and may as well do it on stream. So, so when we're looking at the difference between the piano key, and I wish I had an action model. This is called an action model. This GIF, because it demonstrates the action and allows you to actually feel how it is and see how it all functions. I wish I had one. I don't, so we're just gonna have to use a GIF, and then maybe I'll kind of print something. But again, it's a very complex model. I only have so much time to do this video, so Um, but there's key differences, obviously. So first key difference is that the pedal on a kick drum is reversed from the key on a piano. The key is like a cantilever design. Um, if the drum pedal was similar, the the pivot point of the pedal would be like here, and you would be hitting down on this side. But instead, we've got this, and so instead of having a jack, which is this piece here that pushes up against the butt of the hammer, we have a chain that pulls on a cam and pulls the beater forward. And I think this is a benefit to the kick drum because this is going to be a slightly stronger, more robust mechanism. I can imagine if we tried to do that sort of jack thing on a piano in a kick drum, it would be a little too delicate to handle, people literally stomping on this. The other key difference is, and this is something where we're going to have to test out between the simple modification versus the more true to the piano key modification. On a kick drum, or a piano key is designed so that you can hit the key so delicately and you're still producing a note. And in order to do that, let's say we have a surface here that the beater is supposed to hit. In my more simplified version, all we have to do is stop the pedal before the beater hits the surface. And because the beater on a kick drum pedal is so much heavier than one you'd find on a piano key, the momentum, once the pedal stops, the momentum of the beater should carry it through to do the strike, and the chain allows it to slack and do the strike, and then it comes back. Now, in the simplified version, once the beater hits the skin, it'll rebound back to where the pedal stopped. And so let's say we stop the pedal at an inch away from the... Hold on, let me angle this up a tiny bit. We stop the beater an inch away from the skin. The momentum should carry the skin forward and hit the skin, and then it'll retract back to that inch away. Potential issues here is that it's going to require quite a bit of momentum to carry it forward that much, which on a kick drum I think is okay, because generally speaking, except for very niche like jazz type of things, you're not really going to be hitting a kick drum super lightly. You don't really need that nuance, but I do want to come up with a version that gives you that nuance. Another issue is that rebound, once it hits the skin coming back, we want to make sure that it gets caught so it doesn't rebound and then give you a bounce off the back stop and then give you a double hit. So we want to avoid double hits. What a piano key does that's different is it allows the stop point of the pedal to be a lot closer to the skin. So if this was a more true to the piano key mechanism, the stop point of the pedal would be maybe a quarter of an inch away from the skin. And if we were going to do this, if this was the simplified version, the beater would easily have the momentum to carry and do the strike, but then it would only bounce back that same quarter of an inch. And so that has two problems. The skin is going to be able to flex back and forth and might end up touching the beater because it's only a quarter of an inch away in its stopped position. And of course, the rebound back from the skin will allow the beater to kind of vibrate between that quarter inch and strike the skin again. So in a true piano mechanism, what needs to happen is the stop point of the pedal will allow the beater to reach a 1/4 inch to the skin. Momentum carries the beater through, hits the skin, and then some sort of release mechanism that's separate from the pedal of the kick drum pedal will allow the beater to retract further than where the pedal stopped. This is the escapement. This is the escapement mechanism that is part of the complexity of a keyboard mechanism. So you can see in this GIF, actually, let me pull up a YouTube video here. Right. Because this way I'll be able to like pause it. So, okay. So, oh shoot. How do I kind of like, is it this? Yeah. So, when you depress the key, so you can see at this point we're in the rest phase. The hammer is resting up against its rest block here. The jack is sitting underneath the butt of it's sitting underneath the hammer butt, and that's the fulcrum that launches the hammer forward. When you press the key, it pivots along this rail, pushes up on this whole entire mechanism, which in turn pushes the jack up, launches the key forward. And so let's move forward with this. So you can see it's starting to launch the key forward. Of course, the damper also lifts off, but we're going to ignore the damper for now because that's not the complicated part. At this point here, you'll see the jack has this little L shape, and this L shape is going to hit on this adjustable stop pad. And what this stop pad does is it's going to start pulling the jack out from underneath the butt. And at this point, the jack is no longer pushing the hammer forward. And you can see the hammer is just about to touch the string. So at this point, the hammer is independent from the jack. The jack has now moved out of the way. It's no longer applying pressure upwards. And so if we go back here, the jack is still technically engaged at this point. You know, you've got a tiny little distance here. So at this point, the jack is still providing momentum. But then at this point, the jack is no longer doing anything, and it's the momentum of the hammer alone that is pushing it forward. If the jack was coupled to, or if the jack didn't move out of the way, when we get to this point, boom, it would hit there, and then it would just bounce back and end up back on top of the jack. But you can see the distance there is very small, and so then we run into the issue of the hammer bouncing back and striking the string again. So what instead happens on a proper key mechanism is the jack moves out of the way, hammer strikes the string, and because the jack is out of the way, the hammer's able to fall back further than the point where the jack released it initially. And it gets stopped here by this, I think they call this the catch. And so the catch now allows the hammer to fall back further than the jack would have allowed. But the hammer's not falling all the way back onto its original rest stop. And what this does is it allows the key, the actual key here, to then be released. It allows the key to then be released to the point where, and the stop prevents the hammer from going all the way back. So once you release the key, it allows the jack to get back underneath the butt before the hammer reaches its full rest position. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to repetitively hit the key without waiting for that hammer to have to go back all the way to its rest position. This animation's a little bit like inaccurate because like we're really close to the original rest position before the jack can re-engage with the butt. I believe in a real piano key mechanism, we would see the butt probably re-engage at this point as opposed to this point or this point. But that's all fine. The theory's still there. And so this allows for repetitive hits, which is exactly what we want. The big factor in all of this is that the point that the jack releases the beater is not the same point that the beater is then caught on the backswing. And the point that the beater is caught on the backswing is not the same as the point where the key is, or where the pedal is in its original rest state. So there's three distinct phases here. If we were to try and do the true to piano key mechanism on this pedal, we need to have the pedal come down, release. The pedal needs to stop at a point just before the beater hits the skin. The momentum will carry the beater forward, tap the skin, and then the beater needs to be able to retract further without moving the pedal than the point where it released the beater. So in order to do that, we need to have it so that when the pedal reaches its bottom position, it engages some sort of release that decouples the beater from the axle, from the cam. Once that decouples, it allows the cam to rotate back further than original, or further than the point of release. But then that same mechanism, once you start to lift up on the pedal again, will re-engage the cam with the beater before we actually get back to this full rest position. If any of that makes sense. This is just, I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. There's sort of the fundamental thing that we're trying to mimic here, and it'd be one thing if we were just trying to rebuild a piano mechanism. That would already be hard on its own, but we're actually taking this piano mechanism and flipping a few of the key features around to make it suit a kick drum pedal. And I think that's the real interesting thing with all of this, but it's also going to make it more difficult because there's tons of different things. So one of my ideas was to have some sort of release that is attached to the cam, and I wonder, let me see if I have an Allen key here quickly. Because with an Allen key, I should be able to demonstrate this a little bit easier. No, that's way too small. This is correct. Nice. So I can loosen this. I can loosen the beater from the cam, or from the axle that the cam is coupled to a little bit here. And this will give us a little bit of slack on this so that we can demonstrate this a little bit better. I'm using this battery to stick underneath my pedal so that we have a stop. So the pedal stops here. Let's move this to a point where So this is where like the theory meets reality, and there's certain things that we need to understand. So right now, if the pedal is stopped, there's a little bit of jiggle with the beater here. This is a noisy jiggle, so we can't rely on some sort of mechanical coupling like this because this will be just so noisy. So I'm going to have to build some sort of quiet hinge mechanism, and this is where I'm thinking maybe something compliant. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. I think we can, like, our tolerances on the kick drum pedal can be a lot larger than what you would find in a piano because we're dealing with much heavier parts. We're dealing with a stomp of an entire leg or foot versus just the press, the tiny delicate press of a finger. So everything's kind of scaled up, and so that would allow us to work with larger tolerances, which would be beneficial for this design. But I still really want to figure out some sort of catchment system that allows this beater to fall back further than the point of release. Okay. So, I think I'm going to put the pedal away. We're going to open up Fusion. Oh, shoot. Sorry. There we go. Okay. And we're going to start a new design here. We're going to have to do an assembly design, which I'm not too sure how this works. We're going to insert a component. No, not insert. We're going to create a component. Let's call this pedal. It's weird. Like, why is there this blue line that goes around this? Fusion just changed like a couple things, and I don't really understand what it is. That's okay. So I want to try and design a prototype for this. And basically I want to create a mini version of our final kick drum pedal mechanism that is 100% 3D printed and will actually end up being closer to like the size of a piano key. So for the key, all we need is a rectangle. And let's make this relatively small, right? So like maybe 5 mils by 100 mils. Don't know what I'm basing this off of. And then let's try and make the whole thing like 20 mils wide. And let's angle this up. 12 degrees. Okay, so this is going to be our pivot point. And what I'm thinking about doing to make this easy and to take advantage of some of the new 3D printing features we have, we will just make this a compliant mechanism. And so to do that, we can create another sketch. Oh, actually. How do I add a new component? So we've got this. Let's create another component. I'm going to call this pedal base. Pretty confused with how this whole thing's working here. And we're going to go another 5 mils by 100. Extrude 20. Okay. I should have done this as the base, but that's okay. Okay, so now we've got this. Let's before you use drive joints, you must create non-rigid joints between components. Assembly joints. So joint. So let's make this a joint. God, they changed all of this and now I don't. Okay, I see. This is a rigid joint, which is not what we want. Where is all of this? Relationships, joints. This is not supposed to be rigid. This is supposed to be edit joint. Motion. Revolute. Position. We want. Oh, shoot. I'm so confused. This is all a little bit different than what I'm used to, so. Revolute. Okay. I want to make this sort of the. Okay, this one's anchored. Unground. Ground. Okay, there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a flexure between these two. Instead of doing a proper hinge, we're going to be doing a flex joint using just some flexibles. I'll design that after though. So that's going to be our key action. And then once again, actually we're going to want to create some sort of spot for this to come up. Okay, maybe we'll come up 50 by 5. Okay. Just a little bit of rigidity there. So now this can depress. It'll depress to that point, I suppose. Shrink that a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. So this is our pedal, right? This is what's gonna actuate things. I'm not 100% sure if I see there's a couple people on stream here. I'm not seeing if anybody's talking to me yet. So let me just. Okay, nobody's actually chatted, which is good. I'm not missing anything. Okay. So. Hey, Rosenberg. Thanks for joining in. So what I'm doing here, just a super quick summary. I want to see if I can take a kick drum pedal, which is a really simple mechanism that converts a pedal depression into a hammer strike. This does it via a direct drive cam, which is very straightforward, very simple, very robust. But the problem with this is the hammer is directly coupled to the pedal. So if you were to depress this pedal and hold it down, your hammer stays pressed against the surface that it's striking. I want to create a system where when you strike and you hold the pedal down, the beater itself is allowed to retract away from the skin, which will allow the skin to reverberate at its maximum capacity without needing to have the technique to lift your foot off the pedal. And basically what this ends up being is it ends up being the exact mechanism that we find in a piano key. So essentially I'm trying to take this piano key mechanism and put it inside of a kick drum mechanism. That is the spark notes of what I'm trying to do. The reason I'm doing all of this is because ultimately I'm trying to create the world's smallest kick drum. And I believe the one thing that's getting in the way right now from a playability standpoint is in order to have the world's smallest kick drum function really well, I don't want you to have to change your playing style. And the world's smallest kick drum is going to rely entirely on one single point of oscillation. So it's going to have an oscillating feature that when you strike it, all the low end that you get from a standard kick drum happens at that one oscillating member. A lot of drummers, like myself, like to play in what's called a buried beater style. So where you're heel up, and every time you hit the kick drum, you bury the beater in a kick drum. On a large standard kick drum, that's fine. You still get a lot of the low resonance out of your kick drum because while the beater is pressed up against the skin, the rest of the skin can still reverberate at a pretty low frequency, and of course the shell of the kick drum also reverberates at a low frequency. So even if you're totally dampening the fundamental frequency of the skin reverberating, you're still getting that low end punch. And with a kick drum, you can bury the beater, and that will give you a tighter, higher attack sound. If you bounce the beater, you get the full tonal quality of the drum. And so it doesn't make that big of a difference with a large kick drum. But in the world's smallest kick drum, that would be the difference between actually getting some low frequency reverberation versus getting absolutely zero. The tiniest kick drum ever will rely entirely on the beater striking the reverberating membrane and then being able to bounce off immediately, just like a piano key. An additional feature that will be really cool even on a standard kick drum is then using this mechanism, I could implement the damping mechanism that you find on a piano key, which would allow you to, even on a standard kick drum, decide when the damper actually interfaces with the drum skin. So you'll actually be able to determine how long your kick drum resonates for, which is something that has never been achieved on a standard kick drum before. And it would be a really subtle sound, but I think it could actually create an additional nuance to playing drums that has never been played with before. So on its own, this kick drum pedal would be very cool, even being used on a standard kick drum. But the ultimate goal is to then have this mechanism to allow me to actually create this world's smallest kick drum. That would be that's the ultimate goal. So right now I'm just trying to create a little model, and basically a piano key is a pretty good place to start at, and there's a lot of these it would add a level of rhythmic precision that I think a lot of producers do in a recording process. Like, you know, they do this with sidechain and that kind of stuff where you're pulling away the resonance. You can get a full tone of a kick drum, but you can stop the resonance exactly where you want to, which will aid in the rhythmic precision, as you say. But to be able to do that live in an acoustic scenario would be really, really cool, I think. So a piano key is obviously a really delicate, really complex system. But the big major difference is the fact that the piano key, when you depress it, the fulcrum is happening here, and it's pushing up on this whole mechanism, whereas a kick drum pedal, the hinge is at the back here, and you're pressing down, and it's pulling down on a cam as opposed to pushing up on it. So I'm basically trying to visualize how we can flip this mechanism up on its end and still get the same feature. And my hunch is it might actually end up in a simpler mechanical design with less moving parts, which would also be cool, because if we can make a piano key that has less moving parts, that'd be pretty nice too. And it's mostly just an exploration of how this beautiful mechanism, which took 300 years to develop and is still in every single piano we manufacture today, really studying what's actually going on here and seeing if we can back engineer it and maybe come up with a more robust version, maybe a version, because we have 3D printing, that uses compliant mechanisms as opposed to, you know, all these individual little pivot points, which are all very delicate. And of course, like I'm not expecting to come up with something that piano manufacturers would go, oh, this is now how we make piano keys, because there's so much of the evolution of this mechanism was a result of refining the feel of a piano keyboard. And obviously, like, this is going to be a different mechanism. It's probably going to feel different, so it's not something that I expect to be adopted, but it's more just a study of this mechanism, which I believe I don't believe this mechanism exists really in any other situation. There's different types of keyboards that use tines instead of strings, and like Rhodes and stuff that have different types of striking mechanisms that kind of do a similar thing. But we're not diving into like trying to replace the keyboard mechanism. I just want to study what's actually going on and see if we can convert that and add it into a kick drum pedal, because I'm a drummer and that's my ultimate goal. So shoot for the stars. That's the goal. And at the end of the day, I just love exploring this stuff. It's not so much about I don't know what the actual end goal of it is, but I think there's a lot of really cool learning we can do. So now I need to create a spot for the cam that this will be pulling down on. I'm also just like Fusion 360 changed the way it handles joints and components and stuff. So this is a good opportunity for me to relearn how this all works, because it's changed and I'm a little confused with it. Sounds good, but please chime in and ask me any questions, because I've found doing these live streams that when people are asking questions, it really helps me figure it out in my own head. Like trying to explain stuff to people that don't necessarily have all the context. Um, it makes it a lot easier for me to really like chew on it and figure out exactly what kind of questions I need to be asking. Oh, thank you so much. I'm really proud of that song, and I want to do more like that. I probably won't be doing. The other thing is I've got 3 videos in the works right now, and all of which need to be released in the span of 2 months. I've never been able to do more than 1 video a month, so I'm in cram mode, and I want to really deliver on this. There's going to be way more videos in the next couple months than I've ever been able to do. But I'm a little frazzled by it, obviously. So, oh, you're the best. Thank you so much. If I can inspire people, that is the ultimate goal for this whole YouTube channel. So much of what I do has come from watching other makers and being inspired by them. So it honestly means the world if I can give back in any small way. Okay. Good. I'm not sure why I'm not getting a reference on this. What's actually happening here? Oh. So confused. What is happening? What is happening here? Revert position. Sketch. Why am I not getting anything to reference? This is so frustrating. I don't know what's going on. Oh, that's why. Okay. There we go. Nice. That's all good. That's all good. Just if you have any questions, let me know. But I think this is all going to make more sense in a minute. I'm basically just right now, I'm just trying to recreate a tiny version of my kick drum pedal, so I can have a model that I can actually print and play around with, because I find I can figure things out so much better if I have something that I can actually put in my hands and figure out. Because theory, when things work in theory, there's always little things that happen in real life that you don't account for. I've been 3D printing for, gosh, since like 2018, I guess. Oh, give me 1 second. You're looking for a duster? I don't think I have one in here. Oh yeah. Give me one. Give me 1 sec. Oh, duster. You okay, Tess? Oh yeah. The world's smallest kick drum. I'm trying to do it in like uh, I guess a 12-inch cube. It would have to fit inside of a 12-inch cube. I would need it so that I can print it on a standard printer, like all without having to stitch together parts. So it could be a little bit bigger than the standard printer build volume, but I want it to be a little bit. I want it to basically be like something you can just kind of like carry in a backpack. And I don't know if you saw, I actually did a attempt on the world's smallest kick drum in a video a few months ago, but it failed. I didn't succeed. So that was a rough video to put out, but I did put it out because I think it's important to see when things fail as well. So I need... This is all going to print in one piece, ideally. So ultimately speaking, I'm not going to limit myself to just 3D printing it. I like using 3D printing as a prototyping method because it allows me to do really precise things sort of passively. I can design them, print them, and then I can alter them and reprint them without having to like start from scratch every time. I think what's going to end up happening is it's going to be a combination of like off-the-shelf springs. Might even the membrane might even be like mostly metal. But I should be able to prototype it fully, or for the most part, with 3D printing, and then I'm going to be using concrete and stuff to really maintain a lot of the high frequencies that naturally reverberate off of plastic. So, okay, so our cam is going to end up cam is going to end up, oh, actually, we're going to make a new component here. So I'm going to have basically a strap that goes from the tip of this pedal that wraps around this. This will be a cam. Okay, wait, I need to think about this better, because I also have to think about printability. This is where the printing prototyping does get a little complicated, because printability is such a huge factor in all of this. And right now, I actually think I'm going to undo a lot of this, because I'm realizing the printability is not going to work here. Because I'm going to want to print it like flat like this. And so I'm going to need to capture position. I want to sketch on this surface. I want this to pivot out of the way. I might have to, I got a busy day today, so I might have to call this pretty soon, unfortunately. But I'm going to try and I'm going to try and come back later today as well. I'll probably wrap up in the next 5 minutes here. It's going to be a little bit more rigid. Hey, Tin. Yeah, it's definitely just a process. In my head, this has to work. I don't see why it wouldn't. It's just going to be a lot of when I've built stuff in the past, it's been really quite simple, relatively speaking, because like mechanical things, you can kind of see if they're going to work or not. Um, and I've been building mechanical things my whole life, so a lot of like a lot of the principles that go into mechanical things are pretty easy to understand just visually. But when it comes to instruments and sound, there's so many things that need to happen that you can't see, and there's so many things that are non-visual about it. And that's been a huge learning curve, a real big struggle, and something that I want to really fully understand at some point. But it's definitely like a totally different thing. Um, but it does make for like a fascinating engineering challenge, and that's what's really driving me right now. So I'm just trying to make this rigid, but I can still print it laying flat on this face here. Um, and I can take advantage of supports, and like with 3D printing technology now, it's the support structures are so easy to do, but still need to be really deliberate. This is going to be one piece. I can create a slot on this, I think. It's so annoying that I have to project every time. I don't know why that's the case. Oh. I do this every time. So we'll create a cam here. And a lot of this is just sort of spitballing. I'm not going to lie, I don't have a specific plan yet. I'm just sort of trying to get okay. Gosh, it's annoying. This is really annoying actually. Like, okay, I can still reference that. That's good. Project this point, and let's make the cam like, I don't know, that big, I guess. So this pedal, when you depress it, there will be a strap that connects to the end of the pedal and attaches to the cam. When you press this down, cam will rotate. The cam will then activate a hammer. I do have to wrap up here, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to come back to this in a little bit. If you're around, that would be great to see you. But if not, it's all good. I post all of these after the fact anyways. So we can so you can catch up if you want to join another stream in the future. I think this is gonna be okay. I need to figure out, and I got a lot of the times this is enough for me to get an idea of what I need to be doing. Now I sort of understand the constraints that I'm working with, because I try to visualize this in my head, but I don't necessarily know until I put it down onto the computer if it's going to work or not. And I think this is a pretty good verification of where I'm headed. Oh, awesome. That's so cool. Oh, it's so cool. It's all these, everybody from different places. I love it. Sounds good. Yeah, and I have a schedule. I try to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. That's kind of the schedule, but I'm going to be jumping on streams sort of randomly as well throughout the week now that I've got so many projects in the works. So I'm sure you'll catch me on streams moving forward. Okay, I'm going to pause here. Thanks for jumping on and being with me for this. I'll be back on later today. Yeah, we'll stop it there. Thanks so much.